Okay, so I wanted to do here just a beginner's guide, very basic beginner's guide to driving around. Well, first of all, to sort of driving on GT Sport, but specifically for driving around Brands Hatch. And I wanted to touch on some tuning as well because I think that's important. So let's start with this Mazda MX-5. Let's go to the tuning. This is my standard tuning. I do it basically to all cars because if you're dealing with a racing car, a track car, you could pretty much drive those fast, with a straight tuning. But if you take a road car, with a track car, you can maybe tune and get a half a second a lap out of it. You can improve maybe half a second per lap. But if you're talking about a road car, the standard tuning is, these cars are they're tuned for comfort, not for track. So a tune on a standard road car could give you like 10 seconds a lap or even more advantage. So this is what I call my standard tune. This is my baseline tune. I do it to pretty much every single car. The first thing I do is I make sure I can get to the lowest weight as possible. I take out as much weight as possible. So here we are down to 91%. And you have to sometimes level up these parameters to be able to get the maximum. So level 2 in this particular area here allows me to 91%. I don't need to go to level 3 because that just makes it heavier. So down to 91%, and in this particular car I've tuned it to an N200, which is 190% of what it started out. I always take traction control off, and I always put it on racing super softs. They give you the most grip. So ride height is always as low as possible. Natural frequency is always as high as possible, both front and rear. Anti-roll bar is as stiff as possible. That's 10 on the front and rear. Damping compression to the right on both front and rear. And damping ratio rebound is also to the right, as far as it will go on both front and rear. The camber and the toe I don't touch unless I find out afterwards that I have understeer, heavy understeer or oversteer, and then I may touch those to address that, but otherwise I just keep them as standard. This car doesn't have any downforce. Differential, I just stick to the standard differential. Actually it can be either, but I always put it on the fully customizable if I need to change it. And again, these are parameters that I would change if I found that the car had oversteer or understeer, but if it doesn't, I just leave them as they are. I take the gearbox to customizable, and for this track 149 is fine. I don't adjust the individual gear ratios. So this now will give you a tune that's basically as stiff and as track ready as you can get. It's not going to wallow, and it's going to reduce the amount of wallow that you get, and it's going to be a little bit tighter, and it's going to be a little bit more track ready. So in terms of driving the car, what I do is I have the cones switched on. These cones here, 2 cones is braking, and a single cone is basically where you should be aiming for on the track. So I'm at this cone here, I want to aim for this one. As I power through, I'm aiming for that one. Coming up here, aim here. You get the idea, right? Now the braking is something that's very important. So in this game there's 2 cones that represents a braking point, and it will be a braking point that will work with most cars. Some cars, if you tune them to be more powerful, that braking point will be too late, and some cars, if they're really underpowered, that braking point might be a little bit too early. But it's kind of like your average braking point. So what you should be doing at these 2 cones is heavy on the brakes, completely braking, and that second cone up there, that one that you see right in the middle of the screen, that's your turning point. So what I do is I brake all the way until that cone. And as I approach that cone, what I do is I come off the brake and start to put on the accelerator. Okay, as I'm turning. So what I want to be doing is, as I'm turning at that, as I start to turn at that cone, I really want to be sort of half throttle. I don't want to be going into that turn off throttle, because if I'm off throttle, the likelihood is the back can come out, which, you know, sometimes you want. It's a, you know, it's a way to turn you more. If you're not making a turn, bringing off the throttle and bringing the back out is a way to make the car turn quicker. But for best lap times, what you want to be doing is you want to be turning under half throttle. So what I will be doing is I'll be braking all the way through to this point, and at this point here I start to lift the brakes and I start to apply the accelerator. Then I start to aim for the apex here, which is represented by that cone there, and I power the way through, coming out, and that's the end of the turn there. So again, braking here all the way down, shifting down, and as we get to this point I'm lifting the braking, I'm starting to accelerate, just half throttle, not too much, bringing it round, aiming for this cone, coming up here, brake, heavily lift, aim for the corner, the apex, power out, and really you want to be powering out. Ideally you want to have the wheel straight. If you're powering out when you're still turning, you're gonna bring the back round. So you want to be straightening the wheel as much as you can before you apply full throttle. Like here, okay, I'm full throttle because I've got the wheel straight. So there's a cone here I'm aiming for, then I'm aiming for this cone over here. Coming up, heavy on the brakes, downshift, lift, and start to power through. Aiming for these cones all the time. Brake, downshift, power into. You always want to be going into the corner under power with the throttle on. Don't go in, otherwise you get the back. If I just take the throttle off, the back will start to want to come around. Brake heavily, turn, aim for these cones. So let's bring it up to speed and try and do it a little bit faster. Now this, I'm going to brake past this point because I'm not really at full speed, but brake, downshift, turn, power into the corner. If you overcook it, just lift a little bit. Don't lift violently though. Again, we don't want the back coming round. Just control it with the throttle once we're clear. Okay, full power. See, I'm going into these corners under acceleration, not under braking or lifting. Power through those corners rather than roll through them. People make the mistake, they want to make up time by braking late. It's often not the way to do it. Apex is tight, and then Straighten the wheel and power as soon as you can. Always be at the right side of the track as well. You know, I see people very often, like this corner here, they take it like this. They're on the completely wrong side of the track. So you always want to be, if you're taking a right-hand turn, you want to be on the left-hand side of the track as you approach that turn, and vice versa. So for this is a right-hand turn, I want to be on the left-hand side, straighten that corner out as much as I can, and then turn into it, hit that apex, straighten that corner out as much as possible. This corner up here, I want to be on the left-hand side for the right-hand turn. You know, for example, this corner here, you don't want to be on this side of the track here because that corner suddenly is a much bigger corner. And as you can see, I'm losing control. So let's take it up a bit. Let's go to an N500. See how the principle applies to a faster car. So this is an M500 Porsche. Ooh, got that completely wrong. Now this car is it's the way it's set up. It's a little bit heavier, and I know that I want to be braking a little bit earlier. If I brake exactly at those two cones, I'm probably late. So I brake now. Mental note: this car, I need to just be a little bit earlier on those braking points. So coming up here, I'm braking maybe 3 or 4 meters earlier. Let's see if I can get a good lap in. Missed that apex there. If at any point in the corner I think I'm overcooking it, I just back off. Back off until I know I'm going to make it, and then reapply. I try not to hit the brakes mid-corner because that's not a good thing to be doing. Missed the apex, but okay. Use these cones as your braking points and your turning points, you should be getting pretty consistent lap times. It's only if you completely ignore those, your braking points are going to vary wildly. I mean, some people don't have they don't, you know, they're good enough at spotting their braking points without the cones. I use the cones because I've got enough to be thinking about with them. Without driving. Yeah, some people don't use these cones. They got the visual, you know, posts or parts of the fence or what have you. I just rely on the cones. So let's go to something a little bit faster still, a track car. See how the principle applies there. It's exactly the same thing, but just want to show you. Now with these track cars, obviously they're high performance. The braking point, these cars have great brakes, so you know you can brake at these the double cones, but brake exactly on those double cones. I'm almost stopped before I hit that turning cone. So these cars, because they are such high performance cars, you can take a little bit more liberty with the braking points. So with this particular car I'm in, I know I can go way past the braking point and still make the turn. Otherwise the principle's the same. You're just adjusting the turning point remains constant, but the braking point for this car is going to be much later because it has super high performance brakes. Okay, so if I stop talking, we'll get a good lap in. trying to always be on half throttle when I corner. I don't want to be cornering just off throttle or on brake. Keep that throttle on. And then you can vary it, and you know, if you're too hot, back it off. If you're not hot enough, you can go hotter. But you got to get that braking done early. Brake hard to start with, get off that speed so that by the time you're turning, you're ready to power into that corner. You know, you don't want to be hanging on that corner by your fingernails, just barely making it through because you're too hot. You want to be powering through it rather than rolling through it, if you get my meaning. Maybe not explaining it so well, but get your, you know, if you fix your braking points and your turning points, your lap consistency should be pretty good. You know, you should be chasing a ghost. Because you're consistent from lap to lap, you're using the same points of reference with each lap. Your lap time should be very close to one another, which is where you want to be. And if you can get consistency in your lap, even if you're not necessarily the fastest driver, if you can get consistency, then you win races, because other people make mistakes. They brake late, they miss a braking point, they miss a turning point. You might be a half second a lap slower than them, but you're consistent. You're not making mistakes. You're not, you know, you're not braking too late and then coming off, and eventually you'll benefit. You'll gain an advantage just by still being on the track. I look at my lap times here, around the 1:12 mark. Also, if you can drive consistently, then tuning becomes a lot easier, because you can't see how a tune affects a car if your lap times are varying just by your driving alone. If you can nail consistent lap times, then you can see what effect a tuning makes. So that's it, really. Just a little guide to Brands Hatch and tuning and braking points and turning. So that's it. Good luck.